Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Healing Train. I am your host or your conductor, B.Von Squires, and today we are sponsored by Spirit Source Connection. At Spirit Source Connection, we believe that we are multidimensional spiritual beings and that we have innate gifts and that we enact them through our intuition, our visualization, our imagination, our creativity. And that's not the reason we're here today, though. The reason we're here today is because this is the Healing Train, where ordinary people come to talk about their extraordinary stories. And I tell you what, everybody's trauma journey is different. But what we do know is there will be ups and downs and twists and turns along the way. And so I'm asking you to keep an open mind as you listen to our passenger for today. She has a wonderful story. She is so connected to the universe, so enlightened, and has a great understanding of forgiveness that she's going to talk about today. And with that, I would like Nicole Harvick to please come on and introduce yourself to the community, Nicole.
Oh my gosh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me here. I so appreciate it. I'm Nicole Harvick. I'm known as the forgiveness expert and the quantum energy healer, and I'm so excited to be here.
Oh my goodness, we are so excited to have you here. I know from our earlier conversation last week that you have an amazing story and that our community is going to just love you. Well, guys, let me tell you how this is going to work. As you know, I wrote a book and it's called The Energy Harvest. And there are four phases: the identify phase, where we identify our trauma. And if we can't identify the trauma, then we identify the feelings that are produced by the trauma, like fear, disappointment, anger, rejection. Those are some pretty awful feelings that we've had to endure. And then we move on to the set phase, where we talk about changing our mindset and how important it is to forgive ourselves and others that have harmed us along the way. After that, we're going to move right on into the achieve session of the book, where we talk about all of the wonderful things that we have achieved now that we've healed our trauma. And sometimes those aren't material things. They could be something as easily or as simple as not having that voice in the back of your head as often as you did before. It could be something as simple as being able to sleep through the night without the nightmares. These are things that we achieve along the way as we heal on this trauma journey. And then after that, we're going to talk about how Nicole sustains her positive attitude in the midst of daily challenges that we all have to face. And then we're going to move on to our sustain phase, where we ask Nicole to come on and tell us all about how she maintains her positive ideas and her positive mindset, even in the midst of daily challenges. And so, with that, we're going to go ahead and just jump right on in. Nicole, we are talking about the energy harvest and the identify phase. Can you please explain to us what it was like identifying trauma for yourself, and what was your process? How did you think about it? How did it feel? Those kinds of things. We want you to just bring your authenticity and your transparency, which I know you will. So please come on and share with us.
Well, I so appreciate you letting me share my story, because had we talked maybe even 3 or 4 years ago, this wouldn't have been something I would have done adequately, because I hadn't identified everything yet. And honestly, I talked about my feelings not knowing it was trauma. I had no idea what I had experienced was truly trauma. But everything started about 10 years ago. And part of what happened, and I always say this is a very common catalyst, is I found out my husband was cheating. And I tell people, that's a shock as it is. But how I found out was not so common, because my daughter, who was in sixth grade at the time, called me from her grandmother's house, and she was in California. I was in Arizona. And she called me and she was whispering and she says, Mom, I think Dad has a girlfriend. And I'm like, what? I'm like, why do you think that? She goes, well, I'm getting all these messages on my iPod Touch. I'm like, are you kidding me? What? I said, can you send me those messages? Having no idea that my sixth grader was going to be the catalyst to me finding out. And what was happening was her iPod Touch was synced with her dad's cell phone. And so my innocent little sixth grader was getting sex, texts,
Oh,
pictures, you name it, she got it and sent them to me. And while I had always kind of had, you know, how a woman gets a gut feeling about something's not
Mhm.
right, something's
Oh,
going
yeah.
on, but I never had anything tangible. And
Yeah.
he, you know, deny, deny, deny. And so this was the first time in my life, not only did I have tangible evidence, but the way I found out was it just, I can honestly say I was sick to my stomach. I was really sick that my daughter had to show this to me. And sure enough, to make a long story short, I confronted him. He had to admit it because it was right there. It was right there in front of him, nothing he could say. And this is really what started this journey of reinvention, even though at the time I didn't know what I was going to do. Um, because I knew this and because I was dealing with the shock of this, I almost just kind of, I went into this mode of just muscle memory is all I can really tell you. I knew what I needed to do during the day. I did it with my kids, but inside I was sick. I was breaking. I was angry, shocked. Every negative emotion you could think of was residing in my body. And I didn't know how to deal with it. I've never really dealt with anything like that before. And over the course of many, many months, I started getting sick and I started losing my hair and I started scratching myself till I would bleed. And I asked my guys, I'm like, what is going on? And they were like, you're not comfortable in your own skin anymore. You
Ooh.
know this isn't a healthy journey. You know what's going on. And as the journey continued, even though my husband admitted he had cheated, it was like it was thrown back on me. It was like, well, I said, well, what did you see in this lady? Well, she was bubbly. She was fun, which I took to mean that I was not. I was not what he was looking for. I no longer was that person that he supposedly loved, because when you love somebody, you're not supposed to do that. That was my thinking. And so there was excuse after excuse after excuse. And it was my, I'm going to say it was close to a year that I felt guilty. I felt ashamed. I questioned myself on what could I have done different, never thinking to question him on why did you do that? Why did you find it okay to cheat on me? Why did you lie to me? And so these feelings that I was, that's what was making me sick. That was absolutely making me sick. And finally, I knew divorce was inevitable. And I went about finding an attorney and trying to understand what was going on. And he told me, you don't need to do this, just excuse after excuse after excuse, until finally I couldn't take it anymore. I realized I had two young women. I have two daughters. One was 18 at the time, one was 11. And I like, they're watching me. I can't
Mhm.
do this. And during that, he would still kind of be after me. You're uneducated, you're untrained. Just that narcissism that he had was really suppressing me. And I would tell him, look, that was very unkind. That hurt my feelings. Well, that's true. That's true. And all of that took such a toll on me that I didn't know who I was. I was depressed. I've never been depressed in my life. I'm just that person that's always upbeat. Even if I have a bad day, it's like, okay, we've always got tomorrow. I don't even know who I was. And there's a picture of my on my Facebook of me going through that, and a picture of me 8 years later. And I'm telling you, I don't know that girl in that picture. There was nothing behind my eyes. I can honestly say I was dead inside in terms of not loving myself, not forgiving myself. And it just really took a toll to where I finally realized, and I was scared, but divorce was my only option.
Sure, sure. Wow, Nicole, that is a listening to how you felt depressed and how you turned it in on yourself. I know that's a common theme because I did the same thing. I turned it, it has to be me. And then, of course, I was told it was me, that I was the problem and all of that. And then I internalized it. And even though, like you said, this upbeat person, positive, you can still find yourself being depressed, even though you're not a depressed person. And a lot of times for me, I was in denial about being depressed because I didn't want to say I'm depressed, because for me, it was like, it was like the shame that came along with feeling all of those negative feelings, the guilt of not being good enough, the inadequacies, like you were sharing. She was bubbly, she was this, she was outgoing, and so then of course we turn it on ourselves, and it must mean that I'm not those things, because from someone else's perspective they're telling me that I am not. And so I'm really happy that you shared that with us. Thank you. I can only imagine how horrific it was to see that your sixth grade daughter was being introduced to things that you hadn't probably even had the talk with her yet.
No,
You know,
it was
wow,
like,
bless her heart, bless her heart. And I'm sure that was traumatic for her as well.
it still is, actually. This has been quite a while back. This has been going on 10 years, but she's still talking about it today. She remember, you can't, that's not really something you can erase. You can muster forgiveness. It's her dad, I understand that, but she hasn't forgot it.
Sure, sure, absolutely. And the other thing I want to point out is how your daughters became a power greater than you, setting an example for, how you want them to see themselves, because they were watching. So mom had to portray a good decision here. Mom had to say, this is what we will tolerate, and this is intolerable. And so you made the decision because you knew your girls needed to have that decision in front of them so that they can go on and be healthy individuals as well. And so it's really important, I believe, for us to have those role models in our lives. And so kudos to you, and to any
Thank
woman
you.
that's actually watching this that has gone through similar situations. You're showing her that she can get through this one day at a time and heal the trauma. And then lastly, the other thing I wanted to comment on is how important it is to look at yourself years before, when you were broken in that saddened place, right? In that
Uh,
saddened place, look in your eye of distance, nothing behind it, and then to see your face today, that glow, that healthiness, and to realize that there was a process that happened from this picture to this picture. What an amazing thing to realize, right?
Oh, and when you're going through it, you don't even know. You don't realize you're existing, but you're not living. You're doing it by muscle memory, by what you've always done. And the biggest catalyst for me was during this time, my mother got sick with cancer. And what had happened was my mom and my dad had got divorced like 20 years before. And she had always said, "Oh, I've forgiven him. I put it behind me. I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine." And she died January 3rd of 2015. And about 3 days, she was at my house. About 3 days before she passed away, she looked at me and she said, your dad slept with all my friends. And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" I knew there were cheating issues, but she said he slept with all my friends. So I realized that whole time that she said she'd forgiven him, she literally carried all those feelings, anger, guilt, sadness, fear, with her that whole time, and died with it. And I knew at that time, I thought to myself, that's not going to happen to me. I will not allow that to happen to me. And we know that when we carry that darkness inside us, those fear, guilt, anger, all of those emotions, it has to eventually come out on the outside. And it came out in the form of cancer because she never forgave.
Oh my goodness. And you are really touching on something right now. And this is segueing us into our next session or section called the set phase. And this is where we introduce forgiveness into the picture, because I too believe that as spiritual beings that we are, things happen to our spirit first, and then they are manifested into our physical being. And energy, those feelings that we have are energy sources. They all have energy. And of course, they are on the lower spectrum of the energy field. And so they're going to do some pretty ugly things on the inside. Just like positivity and joy and affirmations can heal ourselves from the inside, those negative emotions can deteriorate them from the inside as well. And
Yes.
so the other thing you talked about is how you got sick and you were able to see that it was because you were carrying around all this low vibrational energy. Wow, I'm so glad to hear you say that. I say things like that here, but coming from you, maybe someone else's ear will pick it up because it is a message that needs to be shared. So thank you so much for introducing that today. And so as we move on to the set phase, can you please talk to us? What was your forgiveness like? Oh my gosh, can only imagine.
And that was a journey in itself because, first of all, you're blaming yourself. So I didn't even know to forgive myself. I had no idea that was possible. And what I did is when I found out he was cheating and this, I was getting sick and losing my hair. I'm like, I've got to heal myself. I've got to heal myself. I became a Reiki master. I became a cellular memory expert. I did tuning forks for sound. I have every certificate you can even imagine. And I was utilizing it for myself. It wasn't to go out there and heal others. It was thinking that I could heal myself. And while I was starting to feel better there, I knew something was missing. And this is gonna tie in, but I took a trip to Hawaii with my girls. And before I go on any trip, I have my spirit guides come in and tell me what I need to do. And on this particular trip, they told me to feed the stray. And I'm like, okay. So we went over there, and in my mind, because I'd always worked with dogs, I'm thinking the stray is a dog. So I was carrying a little bit of food with me, the crazy mother that takes her girls there. And so nothing seemed right. I was going by my gut feeling and nothing seemed right. So one day we decided to climb the Kilauea volcano. And so it was a half day trip. We took our food with us. So I'm crossing over a ravine it was like this bridge with slats and ropes. And I know I'm looking down. I'm like, what am I thinking? Halfway through that, I heard my guide say, make an offering to the island. Well, I did have food with me, so I threw half my sandwich in there. And as I continued along, maybe half a mile with my girl with me, and all of a sudden I heard this rustling in the foliage. And I look down and I see this little bird, and the bird has a hobbled foot and it's starving. So my daughter bent down, Maddie, my oldest one, and we had food, and the bird hopped up to her and ate out of her hand.
Oh my goodness.
I heard and I've got goosebumps just thinking about that. My guide said, you found your stray. The stray was a bird. It was never a dog. So you can't make assumptions with your guides. You've got to like go with the flow. And so we continued our trip. And when I came back, I started seeing this word everywhere. And I had never seen it in my life. Well, it was Ho'oponopono, which is an ancient Hawaiian forgiveness method. And
Yes.
I honestly felt like I honored the island, what they asked of me, which the island's alive. The island is full of life. When I came back, I kept seeing this and I'm like, what is this? So I started researching, and it was forgiveness.
Yeah.
And I didn't have a concept of forgiveness at the time. I'd never really utilized it before, but I knew something was going on, and I heard my guide say, just try it. And it consists of those 4 phrases: I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, and thank you. And so every night I would lay down and I would just say those words over and over, and they're very high vibrational. But I would also envision myself, it's like on a stage. I would see a stage, and the curtains would come back, and either I'd be standing there or my ex would be standing there, or even people who I thought I had done wrong to. And what I was doing was asking forgiveness from me that I did these things, because in any divorce, no matter what happens, there's two of us involved. And I started kind of understanding that I might not have ever cheated on him, but there were times in the past, I used my words not very nicely. And so it was really odd. I was forgiving him and feeling better about myself. And then I heard, forgive yourself, forgive yourself. Like, how do I do that? What do I do? And over that journey, I just started realizing that the things that I had done or the decisions I had made, while they were not always the perfect ones, I didn't do it with malice. I really just did it at the time with all the information I had. Might not have been the best choice, but it was the choice for me at the time with what I knew. And so I started forgiving myself for what I deemed to be my mistakes or things I had said or decisions I'd made for my girls or anyone else. And honestly, that opened my eyes to maybe not everyone does it with malice. I'm not saying cheating is ever okay, but when I read the book, The Four Agreements during this time, and I realized what was done was not based on me. It was based on what was going on within my ex at that time. So that was a journey that I can honestly say that blew my mind. That really blew my mind. And once I started forgiving myself, I kid you not, I mean, it was like things were melting away, things were leaving my body, the anger, the hate, and just those high vibrational words I was using. It was like everything was melting away. And all of a sudden, you kind of feel a spark again. You bring, your smile is real instead of, just that fake that you had the face you have to put on for everyone else.
Mhm.
And I noticed my hair wasn't falling. I wasn't scratching. When I laughed, it was a real laugh. When I smiled, it was a real smile. And that was all due to forgiveness.
Wow.
All due to forgiveness. And I like to call it my alchemy, because in the old days they would turn tin or worthless metals into gold. Well, what I was doing is I was turning hate into love, and
Yeah.
I was turning anger into happiness. It was really it shocked me. It just shocked me that this was something I'd never known about. Yet I started using it and I was getting well.
Wow, that is so amazing. I like to say forgiveness is currency
Yeah.
because when we use it, it does change everything. Between forgiveness and gratitude, those are my two most favorite spiritual principles or concepts, if you will, because I know how powerful they are and they have the power to change my perception from a negative one to a positive one. And you said a lot of things in this section that really spoke volumes to me. The one was how you obeyed your spirit guides, how you have come to understand the relationship that you have with them. And I had to come to understand my relationship too, because they speak to me as well. And I remember the first time they started speaking to me, I thought I was losing my mind. I really
Like
did.
looking at
I thought I was losing my mind. I was on the phone with my friend. Oh my God. They're talking to me. I'm hearing words. I'm hearing voices. I'm hearing things. I'm learning things that I don't know how I know this, but I know
uh,
it. And oh my goodness. And it was just terrifying at first. But then I came to realize that this was a special gift that I have. And of course, I'm not the only one, but at that time, I didn't know anyone else who was, clairaudient or hearing from their guides or any of that. And so as I continued to grow and as I continued to heal in this process, Spirit has connected me with other like-minded individuals. So now I don't feel like such a freak, if you will.
or we can be freaks together.
Exactly. There you go. And so offering up that offering to the land reminded me of a trip that I took to Sedona, Arizona, and they
Mm.
say there are crystals in the rocks, and I was like, oh yeah, really, And so I was doing yoga up there on the mountaintop, and there was something underneath my mat, and I had to kneel down, and so I pulled my mat up to move whatever it was, and it was a crystal, and they
Ooh.
told us, do not take them with you, offer them back to the land, offer them back. And so I thought, nobody will ever know. You know what I'm saying? So I put it on my mat because my intention was to take it with me. That was my intention.
Right.
So as I finished my practice, I went ahead and I got up from the last pose, shook my mat to roll it out, and shook it back off into into the land. And then as I realized that I had given it back to the land inadvertently, right? I looked up and I just saw these crystals just all over the all around me. They were everywhere. And it was like my gift for giving it back. And that was such a beautiful experience. And I know it was for me. I know it was truly for
Uh,
me. And so when those kinds of things happen, it just lets us know that we're not in on this journey alone. There are
no.
so many things that help us understand that, hey, you're not alone. We're here to help you. All you got to do is acknowledge us and give us space in your life. And that's exactly what I have done, over the years. And it's just a beautiful process. And then the other thing that you talked about with forgiveness is that you felt everything start melting away. You saw yourself thriving again. You felt that spark that was, a little flicker, right? Because it was never gone.
Barely.
It was just a little flicker, and then now you feel it, kind of that flicker kind of even growing a little bit. And you're like, wow, this isn't the end of the world. Wow, I am changing. Wow, my life is getting better. I think I'm on to something. And so it's so interesting how you said that you went through the Reiki to try to heal yourself. You said you had tuning forks,
I was just circling my it was crazy but I wanted to heal. I knew I needed to heal. I just didn't know what I was missing. And it was
Exactly.
forgiveness.
Exactly. And so the thing about it is healing yourself gave you what you need to heal others. Isn't that amazing how that works?
And I would have never connected it because that was the last thing in my mind at that time. I just knew I needed to get better. I didn't
Sure.
know how, I didn't know what. And honestly, for the longest time, it was like pieces of my puzzle were missing. What do I do with all this? I didn't know because I was just doing it to heal myself.
Exactly. And who knew that your own personal healing would turn out to heal innumerable people? We don't know how many it's healing. You're out there doing wonderful things in your life, achieving some wonderful things, which is actually bringing us to our next section is called Achieve. But before we do that, I want to let you guys know we're talking to Miss Nicole Harvick here, and she is so extraordinary, and I love her journey. She's talking about the trauma that she endured as a result of a unfaithful husband, and what that meant for her and how it affected her, and she was able to turn it around through her forgiveness. Isn't this exciting? So now we're going to go back and ask Nicole to please share with us how she was able to achieve her successes and what that looks like for her today.
I'm so glad this is part of it because what I would have to say is when I was going through all that and doing my healing, you just have to stay in the moment. You have to kind of surrender to that moment. So you never want to look backwards and you really don't want to look forward because you just want to heal in that moment. So if someone would have told me at that time that you're going to be speaking about it, you're going to be teaching it, you're going to be utilizing it, and you're going to help others understand it, I would have never in a million years, because of the pain you feel, thought there could be anything other than pain and hurt that would come out of my journey. Because that's, when you are in the moment healing yourself, that's all you're really trying to think of is I've got to get well.
Yeah.
And when I finally came out of it and when I finally realized it truly wasn't about me, I I was bubbly, I was fun. I was just married to someone who didn't see that in me, because he didn't see it in himself.
Thank you.
And so when I finally realized that, you get this feeling that, well, maybe, I'm not a bad person. I can do and help for others. And it all of a sudden I'm like, now wait a minute, at my age, if I can overcome something like this, there has to be somewhere I can utilize the pain and the process to help others. And that's when I really started working with people. Forgiveness isn't really understood. You know, a lot of people still to this day think that, nope, I'm not going to forgive him because that's condoning the act. And it's not, because forgiveness is never for anyone but you. And what you're doing, and I tell people, why would you want to hold on to that hurt if they didn't care enough about you to not hurt you? Why are you carrying that inside your body and letting that linger in there? It has no place in there. You know, you've got to get rid of that. You're not condoning their act, and you don't ever have to tell them you forgive them. You don't ever have to see them again. And when they start formulating that in their mind, that makes it a little easier, because you can forgive someone. You know, the power of the one consciousness, the one mind, everything that we do, think, or feel goes out into that field. So you want to make it very positive. You want to keep it loving. You want to utilize forgiveness. And when you do all that, it brings you to self-love. That was something I had no idea I was supposed to do. You know, I loved my kids. I loved my dog, you know, my parents. And I thought, oh my gosh, what do I need to do to love myself? And it dawned on me, you've got to love yourself first. And that came with that forgiveness of self, was self-love. And that was something I had never even thought of. And so I would just, you know, you talk about mirror work, you literally stand in front of a mirror, and it starts out with me. It was like, well, you're not that bad of a person. It's like, okay, pick up the pace. And it's like, you know, you're a good mom. You're an amazing friend to people. You've got so many friends, so many opportunities, so much going on. I love me, and I love my life, and I love the people that are coming into my life. And with that, my vibration started rising, my frequency started rising. And I'm like, okay, this is really cool. I really like this. And you know, you lose some people because they don't resonate with you anymore. It's really kind of this organic process where, you know, some of the people you used to go out drinking with, or, you know, gossiping with, that I had no interest in that anymore. And I didn't want to be a part of it. And people like you know, started coming out of the woodwork. And it's like, my gosh, this is my new tribe. These people are my people. These are who I want to hang out with, because we're positive. We're, you know, we're very uplifting. We have your back. It's not one of those, oh, well, she's doing that, so, you know, I can't. No judgment. It was a no judgment zone. And things just fell into place for me.
Yes.
With that self-love and that forgiveness. And I can honestly tell anybody who's listening to this is all healing must begin with forgiveness. You've got to get rid of that darkness inside you. I didn't know that. That's why every modality I was using felt great and uplifting at the time, but I was sinking back into that abyss. It's because all healing must start with forgiveness of self and others.
Yes, I so agree with that. And that's why it's like the second phase of the workbook, is because before you can move forward, you must forgive, like you're saying. And then there's something else that you said that was so powerful, Nicole. It's about the self-love. How many of us have spent so much of our lives looking for someone else to love us? There's something in our domestication that has told us that we're supposed to get our love from other people, and they're supposed to get their love from us. And that's how we're supposed to be connected. And that is not how my life worked. I don't know if it worked like that for anyone else, but it wasn't until I was able to find that self-love that you were talking about that I was able to feel whole. I was able to feel like there was no longer a void inside of me, because now it's filled with my own self-love. And now that I don't have any voids inside of me, now I feel like all of my energy is moving in the same direction, because I'm not rejecting any part of who I am. And so with that self-love, the opposite is self-rejection, right? Self-loathing. And so as long as I had that self-rejection and that self-loathing, I was actually attracting more of that to me and more opportunities to actually feel that energy. But once I was able to heal myself in that self-love portion, then I was able to take all of me to the table. All
Oh,
of me is moving forward now in the same direction. I don't have any part of me that I'm actually rejecting. And that is a miracle in itself because we reject ourselves in so many ways. That self doubt, the talk that we do for ourselves, you know what I'm saying, tearing ourselves down. Oh, you're inadequate. Oh, you're so immature. You need to grow up, blah, blah. All of that, is a form of self rejection. And so now I need to start telling myself positive things. Like you were saying, the mirror work is so important. Stand in that mirror and I love you, Benita. I love you. And I couldn't say it. I couldn't even look in my eyes at first because it was
that,
so fearful to see what I didn't see there. You see what I'm saying? I didn't see love and compassion for myself in my eyes. And so it was hard and very difficult for me to stand in the mirror at first. But then, like you said, I think I kind of like you. I think you're a little okay.
give yourself a big hug.
Exactly. And it got easier as the days
Yes.
went. And I'm just so grateful to hear you talk about that. You're saying all of the most wonderful things today.
Oh,
This community, anybody that is listening today is definitely going to be blessed by hearing your story. And so
thank you
thank
so much.
Yes, absolutely. And so now we're going to move on, if you're okay with it. We're going to move on to the sustain phase because we need to know, how do you keep the bugaboos away? How do you keep that negative energy from creeping back up on a daily basis? Because we have challenges that we go through. And so, how do you maintain that positive attitude and keep yourself moving to the front instead of looking in the back? How do you do that?
There's so many ways that I do that. And I have to tell you, it's so much easier when you have practiced forgiveness and when you do love yourself than that person that you were. But for me, I always, if something happens and it's not to my liking, one of the biggest things that I do is reframe it. I have to reframe that and ask myself, what did that teach me? What lesson is that? How am I going to help someone else with that? Because I know everything that happens to me is for a reason. And I also know that with what I what I went through, how I came out of it, even if it's just a little blip in my day, I'm going to be able to utilize it somehow for someone else. And
Mhm.
when you have that kind of reframing and you do love yourself, you're not as, I guess I would say, you're not as affected by the negativity. It's like, well, that's their world, that's not going to be mine. They can choose that, I choose not to have that. And I'm not going to say I don't associate with people like that, but I'm just to the point where that's their life, and they have to get out of it themselves, maybe by being around me and talking about it and feeling that I'm of a different and higher vibration. I've had people ask me questions just like you're asking me, and it's like, what am I missing? They'll ask me, because I've had people say, I keep attracting the same person. Of course you do, because you are the same person. You have to rise up. And a lot of it has to do with meditation. I am a daily meditator, sometimes a couple times a day. I turned off the news. I will tell you that. I don't watch any
Mm.
news, any negativity like that. I feel a lot of that is propaganda, and I'm not going to buy into it. I very rarely turn on the TV. One of the biggest things I do is I get myself out in nature. I walk barefoot every day. I let my feet touch this earth. It's just hugging a tree. People think, the tree huggers. Let me tell you something. You hug a tree, they are grounded into the earth so deeply that you're going to feel different when you do things like that. I go sit on the beach, I look at the clouds, and just anything that's going to put me in a positive. I don't even need a positive. I wake up in gratitude. And I remember saying one day to myself when I was sitting there, I'm like, man, I wish everybody could wake up like this. This would change the world instead of that daily, oh my gosh, it's Monday or it's Tuesday. And I'm like, yes, I get to start a new week. And the affirmations. I'm lucky to be here. I'm so grateful that I'm breathing. People say, well, we need a miracle. Well, to me, a miracle is waking up with that first breath in the morning. Can
Absolutely.
be that, it's not simple, but it can be that simple. It doesn't have to be someone coming out of a coma, which of course we all would pray for, but it can
Sure.
be just as simple as waking up and understanding that you're taking your breath this morning because you're here for a reason.
Oh my, wow. That is amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And what you said today was that a positive mindset is going to take you a lot further than a
Oh,
negative one. Okay. And so, what I like to do is listen to frequencies at night and reprogram my mind while I'm sleeping. I feel almost guilty when I don't because I know that's part of my self love. I know that that's how I sustain my positive ideas and able to move into each day with refreshed and ready for whatever's coming. And you talked about having that mindset that everything is going to happen the way it's meant. You talked about having a reason for being here and being grateful for that. You know, Nicole, I am so grateful that I have this opportunity to meet like minded people like you, that you come on here and you bring your authenticity and your transparency and you talk about, hey, you know what? As long as I am in a good place, they can be over there. I don't have to engage with that. I now have a choice that before forgiveness, you didn't have that choice. And so now that you have been able to forgive yourself and others and heal yourself through this high vibrational feelings that you feel and probably learning how to raise your vibration through meditation and those sorts of things, we have tools available to us. And thank you for identifying the tools that you use.
yeah. And I was going to tell you, I do have tuning forks. I don't know if you've ever used tuning forks, but it's vibration and it's sound vibration. And I use them when I get up in the morning, and I'll actually put them on myself, and you can feel it throughout your body, and it raises your vibration. And that's just a tool I use with the meditation every morning. There's finally all the certificates I have that I thought were going to heal me are coming back into play. But
Yes.
like I said, that wasn't a starting point. That was an ending point where I'm maintaining my high frequency, my mindset, my love for others, my gratitude. I'm now in a point in my life, and I'm so grateful that I'm maintaining who I've become.
Oh my God, that is so beautiful. That is so wonderful. You guys, we are talking to Nicole Harvick here, and she has done an amazing job explaining to us about her trauma process, how she has forgiven those who have harmed her and herself. She has found her part in it so that she doesn't have to blame anybody for what they've done. Oh my goodness. And then she goes on and talking about all the wonderful things that she has achieved, not just not just materially, but also the gifts that she has achieved along the way. That is just really remarkable because we all have innate gifts, we all have innate talents. And a lot of times it's not until we need them, right, that we are brought face to face with them. Nicole had a very huge need. She needed to forgive because she was walking around with all of that negative energy on the inside and she wasn't sure exactly what to do, but her spirit guides helped her along the way. And look at her today. Look at her standing before us, a healed version of Nicole Harvick. She no longer represents that trauma. She is representing her healing. And I'm telling you what, if it can happen for Nicole and if it can happen for me, it can happen for you too. And I just want to thank everybody so much for being here on the healing train. Nicole, this has been another exciting episode. Before we say goodbye to the community, would you like to say a few closing words?
I would like to tell everyone out there who's listening that when I started my journey, I felt hopeless. When I started my journey, I felt too old to change. When I started my journey, I didn't even know what I was doing or who I had become. But along the way, I discovered a person that I love, that is caring, that cares for others, and who is still in the process of learning and becoming. And I'm not ready to stop. I'm going to be a learner and a lover for the rest of my life, because just what we're talking about today, anyone can do. Anyone can do this. No matter what age, no matter what trauma, we can find it, we can release it, we can learn to love ourselves, and we can help make the world a better place.
Oh my goodness, that is so wonderful. And so before we go, I want you to tell everyone where they can reach you, Nicole.
Absolutely. And I've made this very easy, not just for the people out there, but for myself. Everything everything is in my name. So if you go to Facebook, I'm Nicole Harvick. If you go to Instagram, it's Nicole Harvick. My website is NicoleHarvick.com. My email is NicoleHarvick@gmail.com. I mean, you can't make it any easier than that. So, and I would, I love to answer questions. I have a 30-minute call that I give totally free to see where you're at in your life, to see if I can help you. You can reach out someplace, you can DM me, become friends with me on Facebook, and I'd love to talk to you and let you know if you feel hopeless, there is hope.
Wow. Well, you have definitely come on here and done what you said you were going to do. You brought transparency, authenticity. You brought your whole self here today, and we just honor you and thank you so much for being here. All right, guys, thank you so much for another exciting episode of the Healing Train. And I tell you what, if you are manifesting for something, I want you to keep moving forward. I don't want you to get discouraged, but if you do, remember that tomorrow is another day to manifest that thing that you are waiting for. It's on its way. Don't give up. And in the meantime, I'm going to ask God to bless you real good. And we'll see you next week on the Healing Train. Bye bye.